Hello everyone, welcome to Capitan Advanced Reading. My name is Susie and I'm here to help you go over basic grammar tips. Through the 5 short grammar lessons, you will be able to go through the writing section of your workbooks independently and easily. Today is the 3rd grammar lesson, which is on verbs. In the previous lessons, we went over making complete sentences and nouns. For the next 3 grammar lessons, we will be going over parts of a sentence. Knowing these parts will help you build stronger sentences. So let's get started. Our focus today will be on verbs. Verbs are words that show action. They are action words. Let's look at this example, or this picture. Here, we want to figure out what the birds are doing. What action are the birds doing? Here, they are flying. Fly is the action word. In a sentence, I might say, the birds fly in the air. Again, the birds fly in the air. Here's another example or another picture. We want to figure out what the students are doing, or what action are the students doing. Here, the students are hiking. Hike is the action word. In a sentence, I would say, the students hike on the mountain. Again, the sentence would say, the students hike on the mountain. Here's another picture. We want to figure out what Doogie and Rachel are doing. What action are they doing? Here, they are sitting. Sit is the action word. In a sentence, I would say, Doogie and Rachel sit near the campfire. Here's another picture. We want to figure out what the boys are doing. What action are they doing? Here, they are singing. Sing is the action word. In a sentence, I would say, the boys sing songs together. Again, the boys sing songs together. Now, naming parts and verbs actually work together. The verbs can change according to the naming part. Here's what I mean. If the naming part names one person, place, or thing, or third person singular, we're talking about one other person, place, or thing, we need to add an S or an ES to the end of the verb according to the ending of the verb. Here's an example. I have the word drive. Drive is an action word, so it is a verb. Let's take a look at the naming part. The naming part here is a friendly man. A friendly man does the action. Well, a friendly man is only one person. So we need to add an S or an ES to the end of the verb. But here, we just need to add an S to the end of drive, and it becomes drives. The sentence would say, a friendly man drives the van. You need to put an S to the end of drive because of the naming part. Here's another example. I have the word eat. Eat is an action word, so it is a verb. So let's look at the naming part. The naming part here is one monkey. One monkey does the action. Since we're talking about one monkey, the naming part is one or third person singular, you need to add an S or an ES to the end of the verb. To this verb, we just need to add an S. So it becomes eats. One monkey eats bananas. Here's another rule. If the naming part names more than one person, place, or thing, or if the naming part is third person plural, or if the naming part is I, you, or we, you do not need to add an S or an ES to the end of the verb. Here's what I mean. We have the action word take. Take is a verb. But let's take a look at the naming part. The naming part here is Ben and Doogie. Ben and Doogie do the action. The naming part is more than one. There are 2 people here. So you do not need to add an S or an ES to the end. So take stays the same. The sentence reads, Ben and Doogie take their backpacks. Here's another example. The action word is go. Go is a verb. Here, the naming part is Mr. Jones, Emily, and Miles. Mr. Jones, Emily, and Miles do the action. Since there are 3 people, or more than one person for the naming part, you do not need to add an S or an ES to the end of the verb. The verb stays the same. So the sentence reads, Mr. Jones, Emily, and Miles go to the car. Here's another example. The word is want. Want is an action word. It's a verb. The naming part is I. I do the action. Since the naming part is I, you do not need to add an S or an ES to the end of the verb. The verb does not change. The sentence reads, I want strawberry ice cream. Here's the last example. Let's try it together. Put. Put is the action word. It is a verb. Who does the action? We. We is the naming part. Since the naming part is we, you do not need to add an S or an ES to the end of the verb. The verb stays the same. The sentence reads, we put the milk and sugar in the cart. Alright, so now let's review what we learned today. Again, the verb can change according to the naming part. The only time that you need to add an S or an ES to the end of the verb is when you use third person singular, or when you say he, she, or it for the naming part. Now let's move on to our worksheet. Let's go over each part together. For part 1, the direction says to color in or shade in the boxes that are verbs. Remember, verbs are action words. So let's try the first one together. Eat. Eat is an action word, so you need to color in eat. Try the rest on your own. Now let's move on to part 2. The direction says to read each verb. Then rewrite each verb with an S on the line next to the verb. So number 1 reads draw. Draw is an action word. Just add an S to the end and it becomes draws. Now let's move on to part 3. The direction says to read the sentence and choose the correct form of the verb to complete each sentence. You need to choose whether the verb stays the same or you need to add an S or an ES to the end. Number 1, Emily blank a bike to school. Well, here, look at the naming part. Naming part is Emily. It's third person singular. We're talking about one other person, place, or thing, so we need to add an S to the end of ride. It becomes rides. Again, Emily rides a bike to school. Add an S to the end of ride. All right, good luck on your worksheet. I'll see you next time.